So thinking of relationships and how, as I've been thinking about it and thinking of sharing it with you all, you start kind of like opening up as I'm just how integral it is in all and so much time sleeping, but even at work, at home, we're always touching relationships with other people. And it kind of, all of a sudden, it's like my eyes are opening up more and more of, and probably because I'm thinking about it, studying and thinking of what I want to share, reviewing and whatever. It just really makes it became very obvious to me that relationships are a big deal. And just to kind of look at it that way, somebody came to Jesus in Matthew 22, 35, 40. One of them, a lawyer, asked him a question, testing him. "Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law?" And he said to him, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the great and foremost commandment. The second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend the whole law and prophets." And when you actually look at it, you see that our relationship with God, and that's really what love is, isn't it? Love is that kind of the rails that the train moves on. It's what makes a relationship possible. Without love, you can't have relationships. It's like I know we've been talking about robots. One robot can't really have a relationship with another because there's no care, there's no love, there's no empathy, there's no feelings. It's just 1 + 1 = 2, and 2 + 2 = 4. Even animals have this for their companions or their offspring. There's a relationship there. And I think, it's interesting that the lawyer is asking him, so what is the biggest thing in the law? And that's so much what the Pharisees and the Jews had their minds on. Everything was about the law, about doing right or doing wrong. There was so much in life that hinged on those commandments that were written. And that was the question. It wasn't the question, what is the most important relationship we could have? It was law. And I think so much in our lives, in church life, we can also go down that path of like, what is the right thing to do? Am I, all these questions, and even the Pharisees, like I said before, it's like somebody gets healed, and their questions were not, hey, I wonder, is he happier now? Like, is he enjoying this seeing with his eyes? Is he enjoying life now? And kind of rejoicing with that person and kind of being with that person. But no, their question was it the right day? Was it, what authority does this person even have to heal people? And whose fault is it that he was even blind to begin with? Or was it his parents? Or was it him? Or, why did the tower fall on these people? Was it their fault? Or, they weren't, it's like everything was law, it wasn't relationship. It wasn't care for people, it wasn't love for people. And I think when God, I think he wanted that relationship with the old law, but he saw it didn't mesh. It didn't work with the people. They got so focused on law that they really didn't have a relationship with him, and he really wanted a relationship with us. And it's interesting that, all the law was really hanging on this thing of like, if I love John and I care for him and I want to have a relationship with him, I'm not going to go and steal his Yanmar excavator, however much I would like to have it. It's just, why would I do that? That's going to ruin my relationship with him. That's not love. It's like God was trying to make the point of that through all his law. And they missed it because they got so focused on the law instead of relationships and my relationship with God and my relationship with other people. And just to recap the last message, we had said a true friend is one whom one can pour out the contents of one's heart, chaff grain together, knowing that gentle hands will take and sift it and keep what is worth keeping, and with a breath of kindness blow the rest away. In such a friendship one feels safe, having neither to weigh one's thoughts nor measure one's words when conversing together. This tells you the temperature of your relationship with somebody. Can you be yourself all the way to the bottom of the barrel, or do you have to be politically correct at some point? If you're not there where you can be at the bottom of the barrel and they can just see everything in you, that's fine. It depends on who that is. You might want to work on deepening that. Let us all seek to be brothers like that. And then we had talked about one of the most important keys and important things in relationships is to die to ourselves and to lay down our life and work with another person's life. So those are the things that we talked about. Now today I want to talk about a different aspect of relationships. And so to do that, I decided to bring out a little bit of a difference between the Old Covenant and the New Covenant. In Hebrews 12:18 through verse 21 here, it says, "For you have not come to a mountain that can be touched, and to a blazing fire, and to darkness, and gloom, and a whirlwind, and to the blast of trumpet and the sound of words, which sound was such that those who heard begged that no further word would be spoken of them. For they could not bear the command, if even a beast touches the mountain, it will be stoned. And so terrible was the sight that Moses said, I am full of fear and trembling." This was the coming of the Old Covenant. It was full of fear. It was full of just that, what if I make one small mismove, I'll be dead. It was, a lot of noise, it says gloom, darkness, whirlwinds. It was obvious that something was going on. But he said, this is not the mountain. This is not the place you've come to. So, what is the place we've come to? And then he goes on to say, "But you have come to Mount Zion, and to the city of the living God." It's not whirlwinds. It's not trumpets. It's not tablets of stone. It's not, if you touch the mountain that you can touch, you'll die. You've come to a living God that wants to have a relationship with you. A heavenly Jerusalem. It is another world, if you will, and to myriads of angels, to the general assembly and the church of the firstborn, us right here, this congregation. This is what we've come to in the new covenant. relationships in this church. And to God, the judge of all, the church of the first firm who is enrolled in heaven, and to God, the judge of all, and to the spirits of the righteous made perfect, and to Jesus, the mediator of a new covenant, and to the sprinkled blood which speaks better than the blood of Abel. So we've come to a new covenant, a covenant of a living God, to angels that are working on our behalf, to the general assembly, all of Christians, and to the church, that might be referring to our local body. And so you can see there's that shift between whirlwinds, physical things, to heavenly things, not tablets of stone, but tablets of flesh, and brothers and sisters in a church, angels, to God himself. He's living. It's like a switch from thou shalt to I will do this in your life. It's a switch. Galatians 3:23 says, But before faith came, we were kept in custody under the old law, being shut up to the faith which was later to be revealed. Therefore the law has become our tutor to lead us to Christ, so that we may be justified by faith. But now that faith has come, we are no longer under a tutor. For you are all sons of God through faith in Christ Jesus. For all of you were baptized into Christ, have closed yourself with Christ. So, the difference between a teacher and a parent, and this is what I want to talk about today, is time. Number one, that there is a difference in the Old Covenant versus the New Covenant, that he wants a relationship with us, and the other part of that is time. So we talked about last time about where we give ourselves and take up the cross, and we die to ourselves. Very important in a relationship. So there's another aspect to this, where in the Old Covenant, when he wrote those things on the stone, tablets of stone, it didn't take a relationship to do that. It was just, thou shalt do this. In the New Covenant, it takes a relationship, and it takes a Holy Spirit indwelling you to start writing those things, his things, on your heart. It takes time. It takes a presence. It takes the presence of the living God in your life for those things to happen. And the difference, between a tutor or a teacher and parents is a teacher, you come to class, the teacher tells you the commandments, if you will, like tablets of stone, and then you leave and he leaves. And there's no real personal interaction. It's just, you learn these things, you memorize them, and then you write them back in a test. And it's a little sad because a lot of school is actually kids with good memory versus kids with not good memory. So if you don't have a good memory, maybe it won't work. Same thing with the Old Covenant. It was like they went through them. They committed them to memory. They really had to think about it, and they reviewed and talked about it, and reviewed again and talked about it. But in the New Covenant, Jesus spent time with his disciples. It wasn't like he was just like, okay, now you have to do your studies this morning, and we're going to go through all of this, not that I'm aware of anyway, and we're going to commit this to memory. They watched his life, and that's the difference between parents and teachers. Parents, kids spent most of their time watching and learning. And that's kind of the meaning of a disciple, is it's somebody who ingests the whole teaching of the teacher. He observes him. He watches how he interacts with people. He looks at how situations, like certain situations, Jesus was really like, you're a brood of vipers. The next situation, his heart was broken and he wept. The next situation, he cried out and prayed. And they were just like observing and thinking, well, what is he doing here? Why does he feel this way? And through a life of observation of those 3 to 4 years that they spent with him, there was obviously 2 things that he did. And this is a message for another time, communication. Obviously, a big deal in a relationship. But today we're focusing on time. But I just want the difference between Moses being in a mountain and coming down with tablets of stone versus Jesus coming down in person and walking with his disciples is really a big deal of the difference between the new covenant and the old covenant. And just the time he spent walking with them, explaining to them, and them observing him and him observing others. So in your relationships that you have, time is a big thing. It's not just communication. We think, well, texting, let's just text my friends, or let's just social media. There's nothing that replaces actual time spent with that individual. Just going and being with them. Understanding, like, what their feelings are. Like, how often do you really express your deep feelings and what you're going through and whatever in life on texts? Not often, because there's something missing. It's the time factor. It's the sacrifice of time. There's no sacrifice in a quick text. John 3:22-24. After these things, Jesus and his disciples came into the land of Judea, and there he was spending time with them and baptizing. He was spending time with them. He came from heaven, and you would think, well, there's so much information in Jesus that he should literally be preaching all the time, and they should take, clear notes of every word he wrote, or every word he said, because wouldn't that be important to hear there's no way that they recorded every word he said. Because I don't know that Jesus made that as much a priority as he did that they would, because he said, if you saw me, you've seen the Father. And them to catch the life, and then they can share that life with others. And then in John 12, Jesus there for 6 days before the Passover came to Bethany where Lazarus was, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. And they made him a supper there. Martha was serving, but Lazarus was the one of those reclining at the table with him. He had time for social interaction, sitting down and having a meal with others. He had time to spend with other people and just maybe talking about everyday life. So, how do we find time for relationships? This is now practical. We saw what Jesus did, and we saw the switch that God did, if you will, from Old Covenant to New Covenant. From, here are tablets of stone, you have to do this, to, all right, here are tablets of heart that I'm going to write into your heart, and I'm going to come down and I'm going to be with you, and I'm going to walk with you, and I want a relationship with you. So I drew a little diagram here for you all so that you can start spending the correct amount of time with all of your relationships. It's not a lot going on here. It's a little overwhelming, actually. So, mom and dad, they have a relationship with God. They also have a relationship with their family and their friends. And they have a relationship with their coworkers. And then they also have a relationship with you. You have a relationship with your mom and dad. And you also have a relationship with your siblings. And your siblings also have friends, which you have a little bit of a relationship with. But then you also have friends that you have relationships with. And I kind of meant this to bring order to things, but it didn't work. There's a lot of disorder in this. There's a lot going on. This is the very reason why sometimes we don't spend time. Because there are a lot of relationships in our life. And I've just been the last couple days, there's a book called Atomic Habits. And if you read it, you discover that there are certain habits in your life that are atomic habits. So there are certain habits in your life that they can affect a little bit of something. But there are other habits in your life that affect your whole day. I don't know, what's a good example? So let's say there's a habit somebody has of every morning they take a 30-minute walk. That habit may be so important to your life because it gets you up. It gets you going. It gets your heart pumping. There's value in it, just physically. It gives you time to clear your head. You might pray as you walk. And there's so much that might hinge around that habit that might affect your whole day. But then there's another habit like you eat a granola bar every day. Well, if you miss your granola bar, it might not affect anything else, right? So kind of trying to bring the difference between an atomic habit and a non-big deal. And I think this is what we need to do with our relationships, is we need to think there are some atomic relationships, and then there are other relationships that are great to have, but if we're serious about spending time, what are the ones that affect our whole life? And I think it's very clear to us. I mean, obviously, today I'm talking about our relationships with other people. I think we spend many Sundays talking about our relationship with God, but today is about time and about our people. And there are certain people that maybe you're spending a lot of time with some people that when you really look at your schedule or really look at your life, such as a husband and a wife, you are so intertwined with each other. There's so much going on that if that relationship, there's not proper time spent, it will affect. It's an atomic relationship. Either it has great energy for the good, or it has great energy for the bad. It's like when we were in California, we went through a carrier ship. And I think I said this here before, but it was so mind-blowing to me. The carrier ship we were going through was commissioned right after World War II, and it was a big ship, had a big deck where they flew the airplanes off, where they stored them in underneath, had an elevator to bring airplanes down in, and you went through the crew's quarters, the captain's, or the officer's quarters. It was very interesting. But we stood on that deck, and the guy who was taking us around said, now look over there, and there was an atomic-powered ship, also a carrier, much bigger than the ones that we were in. But this carrier, he said, basically you almost had to have freighters following it around in the sea, because they would just dump oil in it, and then they bring the next freighter and just dump oil. It took so much energy. It's like a floating city because of all the power it took to run it. But he looked across the harbor and he said that ship, the atomic ship, and I believe it was every 20 years, needs a refueling. They can run that thing. Just go, go, go. No freighters have to follow them, give them oil. That's how powerful one atomic reactor is in that ship, or whatever they use to run that. So there's atomic relationships in our life that we have to be very jealous over. Kids, your relationship with your siblings. Kids, your relationship with your parents. Parents, your relationship with your wife. And parents, your relationship with your kids. Those are close relationships, and they will affect the rest of your life. These are the most important relationships for us to work on and spend time with. But so often we get pulled into another direction of maybe there's some kind of drama going on in the office, and that takes our focus away, and we don't spend time with our family, which is the atomic relationship in our life. So I'm going to talk about, not very long, this is going to be very short from here on, so listen carefully and really take it in. This is probably the most important thing my wife and I have done in the last, I don't know, how long have we been meeting Saturday mornings? Year and a half, 2 years? If there's one regret I have of our marriage, is that we haven't done this all our life. And that is, and later I discovered that it's actually a psychologist was looking at his patients and was studying it and was like looking at it, and he came up with an equation through studying all his patients. And he said it is basically clinically proven, at least in his clinic, the people he worked with. If you want to maintain a husband and wife relationship, just maintenance, not going backwards or forwards, but just maintain it. It is basically according to what he discovered clinically through his working with his patients. You have to have 90 minutes per week of just you sitting down with your spouse and talking about the economy of your home. And what I mean by economy is, how are we doing on finances? Are we paying, are we okay here? Are we okay over there? What does your schedule look like for next week? What's on your calendar? Are you going to be gone evenings? Where are you going to be here? And what's your schedule look like? Where are the kids going to be? Are they busy? Do we need to get the oil changed in the car? Do we need to do this? And what's your plan on this? And what are your, and then a big thing for ladies is, I just don't know what to make for supper. That's a great day to plan it all out. We usually plan out our whole week. So now she can, when she goes to the grocery store, she can go get the stuff that she knows she needs. 90 minutes per week. Can you, out of the most atomic relationships you have, I'm going to shame you a little bit if you can't find time. And I know when you have kids, it's different. Young kids. But I would just so highly recommend, I can't tell you what to do. You live your own lives and you make your own rules. That's how run things here. But I would just highly recommend, out of personal experience, 90 minutes. Can you spare 90 minutes to just talk through? It's not a romantic date. That's the next thing we're going to talk about. Ooh, yeah. It's just talking shop. It's just talking about, how often are you, the husband comes home and he's like, he's had so much going on today, and he eats, and then he might do some things around the house or whatever, and he lays in bed and he's just like, I'm ready to sleep. And then your wife is like, hey, I had this issue today. And it's like, this is so, because now if you tell me, I'm going to wake up, and then I would have this on my mind, and I can't sleep all week. Now, we have to, as men, we have to do better than that. I need to be more mentally strong, and I need to just say, yes, absolutely, what's going on? But sometimes those issues crop up because we're not spending those 90 minutes every week. Just spend 90 minutes. I'm going to just harp on that because it works. We don't do it every Saturday, but we try. Just go over your schedules. Go over what's going on. And what I've found is because you're talking, all of a sudden things open up that you talk about other things that are maybe more personal. Something for you to think about. So my advice is try it. So also in his clinic, he found that you need a minimum of 1 date per week. Don't make it like where you have to go out to a restaurant and you have to dress up. It can mean, hey, let's jump in the car, let's go down and have an ice cream cone together. It's just away from everybody. And again, I know this is really tough when you have kids. How do I do that? I don't know, maybe once they're in bed, just sit on the back porch. Just 1 date a week. Can you spend that time? And maybe if your relationship isn't great, maybe you think, well, every time we spend time together, we have a dynamic relationship. We have a atomic relationship. Well, you have to start somewhere. And maybe you can talk about things that are not atomic. I don't know. I don't have the answers on that one. I'm just saying somebody that ran a secular business with working with people discovered that you need 90 minutes of talking shop and at least 1 day a week to maintain. What about friends? What about relationships with parents with kids? I think the whole, I don't know, dating sounds a little weird, but just spending time, I think individual time is a big deal. We spend a lot of time together as a herd, right? But do we spend time together just us? Just a parent with a child? Something to think about. I think it's important. And then you siblings, I know a couple of our kids went on vacation together. And it's like other people were like, wow, I don't know if I would have went on vacation with my sister. Like, that could have been very atomic. Now, there may have been atomic moments, and that's fine. But time spent is such a big deal that God went away from a law-oriented, written on stone, to I'm going to come and I'm going to visit you, and I'm going to show you how to live. You know, this same psychologist also said, we think sanity is that your head and your thinking is well put together, and that's what makes you a sane person. He said it's actually not. He said it's how well you integrate and you work with other people in your life, other friends. Because he said what keeps us sane is we'll tell a joke that's really not that funny, and all of a sudden you're like, well, nobody's laughing. Okay, note taken, that joke is not funny. Now, I haven't learned this one yet, and I gleefully continue with jokes that nobody's laughs at. And finally it gets so ridiculous they laugh again. So don't follow my insanity. But relationships keep us sane because people give you pushback when you say something a little out there. They're like, oh, that's a little strange. You probably shouldn't be like thinking that much. And you're like, okay, yeah, I think they're right. Whereas if you live in a cave somewhere and maybe two people that are the same, they'd come out after 10 years and they would be weird. Because it's like they just fed off each other and they never discovered that normal people don't do things like that. So actually, having good friendships, having good, strong friendships, gives you pushback in areas that you're maybe kind of going a little off the rails. So there's even value in keeping your sanity to have friends. And here you thought you had to keep your sanity by getting away from people. When you have strong relationships, it makes for a strong church. And this is really important for us here. Have relationships outside of church. I just think it's so great. John, I heard you went camping with all these people, and I don't think there's almost any, well, I guess Sam's, if you're involved in that, and John's, you'd be in this church. But there's so many friends you have that are outside of church. It's truly wonderful because you get information from them, and it makes your life richer because you're spending time with them, right? You're camping with them. You're spending time with them. It makes your life richer. It's like cross-pollination. And you gain some things that you're not learning just in this little cloistered church. And you can bring that back, and you can share that with us. And now we're richer for that. Good relationships build a strong church. And now I'm going to end with these verses. But I am going to him who sent me. So Jesus had his time here on the earth, where he spent time with his disciples. He walked with them. He showed them what the Father looks like. And none of you asked me, where are you going? But because you have said these things, sorrow has filled your heart. Obviously, they had a good time with him. There was something life-giving about Jesus. And when they thought of him leaving, it gave sorrow in their heart. Obviously, he built a relationship with them. But I tell you the truth, it is to your advantage that I go away. For if I do not go away, the Helper will not come to you. But if I go, I will send him to you. This is how God spends time with us now. I have many more things to say to you, but you cannot bear them now. But when he, the Spirit of truth, comes, he will guide you into all truth. For he will not speak on his own initiative, but whatever he hears he will speak, and he will disclose to you what is to come. He will glorify me, for he will take of mine and will disclose it to you. All things that the Father has are mine, therefore I say that he takes of mine and will disclose it to you. This kind of relationship takes time, of where the Holy Spirit, you are now the temple of the Holy Spirit, and God is dwelling in you, to where he is spending time with you all the time, saying, I don't think that's how God would want it in your life. Change that. And we heard this morning about comfort. He comforts us. So literally God went from giving commandments to now being present with you all the time. Obviously, time works in relationships because he sent an ever-present Holy Spirit to spend time and be with you and in you. So time works in relationships. So take that home with you. Think about what I said. Think about your relationships and the ones that are atomic to you, the ones that affect your whole life. And are you willing to put it on your calendar and spend time with those people? God bless you.